Ever since we started grade school, we've all been told that we need a big, strong government to look after us. And that, sure, it may need fixing here and there, but generally today's government size is about right. We disagree. We think that government is a parasite, living off what you and I earn and using our money to do unpleasant things to us. From being a nation of self-reliant go-getters, America is fast becoming a country of government junkies. We think an alternative exists, one that puts you back in charge of your own life and destiny. We call it the freedom alternative.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. I'm Peter Verderosa.
And I'm Jim Davies.
And today, I thought we'd do something a little bit different, with Jim's permission, of course. Recently, we were on a telephone talk show on the radio, and there were some interesting questions presented, and I thought that just to give you a better view in recapping things and the purpose of the program, I could interview Mr. Davies, our producer, and he certainly is ready and is quite able to field any question that I might throw at him. And we hope that you'll respond, and anything you'd like to know in depth, you can call at the number given at the end of the program.
Now, these questions are a bit like what we got thrown at us over that radio program.
To begin with,
okay.
I think that first, what I'd like to ask you is, 70 weeks ago, why did we begin this program?
Oh, well, I think we want our audience, you folks, to see the tremendous contrast between society as it now is, affecting your life and the control of your own life, and the way a society would be and the control of your own life would be in a state of freedom where government was minimal or even non-existent, where we all had full control over our own lives. We call that freedom, hence the freedom alternative. We want to show the vast difference between what is today and what could be in a free society.
Okay. One of the questions put to you from a lady who called was this. She said, back then, that is at the beginning of America, when the founding fathers were going to formulate the Constitution,
right.
that of course was after, some years after the Declaration of Independence was drafted by Thomas Jefferson. She said, what makes you guys think that those elitists, the aristocracy, as we refer to them, but she called them elitists, I recall. She said, what makes you think that they had any intention of letting the little guy get to where they were?
I don't know where she came from, that lady, intellectually, I mean, because I really don't know the detailed state of mind of these founding fathers of the United States of America. What I do know is what they wrote down. And the charter that they've left for us in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is the nearest thing that mankind has ever seen to a charter for the ordinary guy to run his own life his own way, and that's what we stand for. Now, they were the products of the what I believe is called the Age of Enlightenment, the philosophical period of the mid-18th century through the end of the 18th century in France and England to some extent with Thomas Paine, and also in the founders of the American Republic. They had this belief that the common man should be allowed to live his own life his own way, and that went in to the whole warp and woof of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It was designed to limit government. So I don't know what their intention was, but that's what they did, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. Public schools today seem to equate democracy with freedom. Does the libertarian ideal, okay, that's what I want to ask you. Does the libertarian ideal think well of democracy?
Well, let's be very clear. Freedom is when you control your life, and I mine, and Peter's, and none of us controls the life of anybody else. I don't control your life, and nor you mine. That's what freedom is. Is that the same thing as democracy? No way. No, not at all. Democracy is a form of government, a means of controlling somebody else's life. It may be, we're not going to be dogmatic on this, we haven't been on the program, it may be that an ideal society needs some minimal layer of government to oil the wheels, as it were. This is arguable. I tend to think probably it doesn't, but we're not going to get into that. If you have a government, then, and only then, a democratic means of electing it is the best available out of the bad choices. Yes, I'll go that far with democracy. It's got that much usefulness.
Could one then say that that what we're doing here is espousing something the crux of which says government should definitely not be in the business of social reform?
Oh, there are dozens of businesses it shouldn't be in, and that's one of them. You see, I think Andre Maru, a person who was interviewed on this program just a few weeks ago, he's running for president, he had a beautiful illustration. The more government does, the more power it has, the less individuals have. And the more power individuals have, the less power government must have. It's a zero-sum game. It's like a seesaw. You can't get away from it. That's the way it is. And we favor maximum individual freedom and therefore minimal government.
Now, we've clarified that. We've told the viewers once again, we've recapped, we told them why we're here, and we continue to be here, and it's been tough. 70 weeks now.
It's been fun, I wouldn't say tough.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, some work, okay.
I have no regrets. It's wonderful.
But you've got another tough question for me?
Well, here's what I want to do with the rest of the program, where I want to go from here. I'd like to take issues, current issues,
Yeah, good idea.
and I'd like you to give our viewers an idea of how libertarian philosophy, if it could be put into practice today, would deal with these current issues.
Right.
Okay?
Fair challenge.
And one of them that I know you're dying to talk about, right, because it's right up front in the news now. Thomas Jefferson High School in Brooklyn was the site of a terrible tragedy recently.
Was it 2, 3 kids shot?
Two shot dead, and I think one perhaps wounded. But in any case, it's the result of students getting into school carrying handguns, to the point now where the mayor of New York, and he was joined yesterday by Bill Cosby, who has great influence over some of the young people, especially the black young people, and he spoke to them and said, there is something in here that you must boot out. This is the way Cosby put it. Figuratively, maybe referring to it as a demon.
What was he referring to?
A demon, I think.
An inclination to fight.
An inclination
okay, I don't
to
know
fight.
that.
Okay, and of course a lot of the students were receptive because he is respected now because he's so popular on the TV, on media. And he seems to be a very good man and a man of good intent and peace. But in fact, when we apply libertarian philosophy to the situation there, how does it apply?
Yeah, I honestly think, Peter, that in a free society, I really think that situation could not have arisen. I mean, it is a dreadful situation. You've got teenage kids wandering the streets of New York City and other cities, carrying guns with the intention of shooting each other if they have to. This is the result of, well, 200 years of over-government, and in particular in the last 70 years of over-government. This is what the established powers have done. This is what it has come to, folks. And still, are the media, are the great thinkers of our age questioning what has been done and saying, hey, wait a minute, where did we go wrong? No, they're blaming the kids. They're saying you shouldn't carry guns. This is pathetic. The people to blame here are the folk who first of all built that school with taxpayers' dollars, that is stolen money, monopolized the curriculum, monopolized the right to go there, they forced kids to go there, and then they slapped on it the name of Thomas Jefferson, who must have turned over in his grave when they did that.
I kind of think
this has got nothing to do with the free society that Thomas Jefferson created. And they have controlled rents in order to, I don't know whether in order to, but with the result of deep poverty in the cities of America. Whether they really were naive enough to think that rent control relieves poverty, I don't know. It actually creates poverty, and you can show that cause and effect. They have created an enormous mess, and they're still not getting blamed for it. Well, we're going to blame them for it.
Okay. Something very important here. If schools were entirely private and had never fallen into the hands of government, are you saying that you could be darn sure that parents would take much more interest in the welfare of their children?
It's elementary.
And in fact, guns would never come into a private school in the first place because you're paying for the service
many
of
things
educating
would
the
prevent
child.
this thing taking place. First of all, the appalling, grinding, permanent underclass that inhabits that part of New York City wouldn't be there. This would still be a land of opportunity. So the environment would be totally different. The housing would be totally different. The compulsion to attend a government school wouldn't exist. People would be spending their own money where they wanted to on such education services as they choose. Of course, It would be radically different when you spend your own money. You make darn sure you get value for it. And if you're not getting that, I mean, can you imagine paying a fee to send your child to Thomas Jefferson High? The first whisper of a gun in the corridor, I'd whip my kid right out and send him to somewhere else. And if they didn't fix the problem, they'd go out of business, period.
It sounds so very simple.
Of course it's simple. The free market is simple. They have prevented it working. This is why they've got the mess.
Okay. Did you get that, viewers? I hope so. Good explanation, Jim. We thank you for it. Here's something else that's, it sticks in my craw, and I hope, in fact, that a lot of people who enjoy listening to Professor Milton Friedman and agree with him and others like him that espouse that philosophy, capitalism and freedom, so forth and so on, see this. Paul Tsongas, one of the Democratic candidates running for president, a lot of people claim they like what he's got to say because, on the one hand, he's compassionate, which is typical of a Democrat, okay, or should be typical of a Democrat, and they like that.
It's the reputation they like to build.
Yeah, what you feel, and as opposed to what you know. And yet he's been accused by Bill Clinton of being a supporter of trickle-down economics. Now, the term trickle-down economics, I feel, has been used to pander to the fears of the lower class, because really what they should be saying is not trickle-down economics, or if you don't disturb the rich, their spending will in fact give the low man on the totem pole a job sweeping a floor someplace. But it should be said that this is simple cash flow. This is not only how America should operate, but it's how every small business operates. It's cash flow.
You see, Tsongas isn't the only one who used the term, and Clinton. I believe that Republicans and Democrats have frequently used the term. It's an extremely arrogant term.
But then,
who the heck are they?
But then, as a man named George Corley-Wallace said, and also, as a matter of fact, Gore Vidal said the same thing, that there is no difference between the two parties.
Oh, of course there isn't any difference.
Gore Vidal claims he was put off the media for saying so.
Yeah, interesting. Our regular viewers will know that we refer to it as the R&D party, or sometimes as Republicans, or occasionally as Demopublicans. We really can't tell the difference. But the idea that there is a trickle-down possible, this is not the society that the Founding Fathers wanted to found. The society they were founding was one of opportunity. You work your way with your choices, your decisions, and you make yourself as wealthy as you want to get within the limits of your ability. End of story. That's what America was supposed to be all about. There isn't a question of handing government money to the people at the top of the heap in the hope that it will filter down. That's a disgusting idea. And as for Tsongas's and the Democrats' compassion, this is the fiction that they would like voters to believe, I'm sure. I deny absolutely that any Republican or Democrat has got any compassion whatever. They are first stealing somebody's money and forcing them to spend it in a certain way. That's not compassion. Compassion is when you feel pity for that man over there and you help him. That's what compassion is.
I believe
with
so.
Your money.
I believe so.
Not mine.
That's right. That's right. But one of the things that the two parties have in common, definitely, is that they, every day, when they're in session, unfortunately, legislate equality rather than observe equal rights.
Yeah, but this is what the political process is all about. When you give these people the power to redistribute wealth, that's precisely what they will do, because they're self-interested in, and their aim is to get as many votes behind them as possible. So when you allow a system like that to continue, that's precisely what you will get. We can't blame them particularly for doing it. What we need to do is completely scrap the system and start over. Going back, I think, to the principles that the Founding Fathers put in the Bill of Rights. You know, that's what we need to do, and that's why we're here. We're hoping to encourage people to further that move.
There are many interesting things happening today. There are primaries in 7 states today.
This, we should say, for folk, is March 3rd. I think they call it Super Tuesday?
That's correct. It's March 3rd.
Okay, the primary is taking place today.
March 3rd, 1992. Yeah. There was an interesting decision made in the courts in Morristown, New Jersey yesterday about Richard Kramer.
Tell me about Richard
Kramer. For those
Kramer.
of you who don't know who Richard Kramer is, he's a homeless man.
Oh, okay.
May I use the term scruffy, a scruffy-looking homeless man at that. Now, whatever
You mean he's got a beard?
He's got long hair.
Long hair?
He
Oh.
looks as though he rolled out of a garbage bin.
Oh, yeah.
And it is the claim of the Morristown Public Library that he smells like he rolled out of a garbage bin.
This is a bit offensive if he goes near people.
They insisted that he leave the library. This happened last year, I think.
Who owned the library?
It's owned by of course, it's a public library.
It's owned by the government of Morristown.
It's owned by the government
Okay,
of
go on.
Morristown. Okay, so he was told to leave that library because the odor emanating from his body and clothing was offensive.
Yes.
And they didn't like the way he was staring at the readers. They were complaining about it to the librarian.
Yeah.
Now, he went and got a lawyer, and yesterday the decision set a precedent because Richard Kramer was awarded $150,000.
He must have thought that, something good had happened that day.
How would libertarians address that situation?
Okay.
Would that situation never have evolved?
Once again, I seriously believe that it could not happen in a free society. And
Tell us
therefore
why.
It's therefore extremely difficult to say this is how we'd have handled it. It wouldn't have arisen in the first place in a free society. Reason? People's money would not have been, that is the taxpayers of Morristown, their money would not have been stolen in the first place to build the library. It would not be a government library. If there were a library in Morristown, New Jersey, it would be there by private subscription. It would be privately owned, whether for profit or for charity, I do not know or care. It would be a private institution, and therefore the owners of it, the legitimate owners, there are no legitimate owners of Morristown Public Library. The term is it's a contradiction in terms. The legitimate owners of a private library there would set the rules as to who can and cannot come in, how they shall behave, and what they shall pay.
What if he challenged them in a court of law, in a private court of law?
Well, he would presumably, if he had broken their rules in some way, if there was a rule saying you shall not come in here if you emit certain odors, then the court should, I trust, have upheld the right of the owners to keep him out.
But in the
Here,
case
we
of,
haven't got any such right because he's a member of the public, and the ridiculous fiction is of government-owned property is that the public can go into it.
is there altruism and vote buying involved in this deal?
Yes, of course, because we saw it in my town, which is Ridgefield, a few years ago. The people who feel that the common folk, the plebs, they used to call them in the ancient world, should be
Here we say
educated.
plebes.
Well,
or plebeian.
In Latin it was plebs.
Plebs.
I don't know, but let's not argue about that. That they should be educated at public expense. What they mean is they want to steal taxpayers' money to make people read fine literature. They also want the opportunity to get free books for themselves. A very tiny proportion of any town actually goes to a library and uses it. They get the benefit, everybody pays for it. It's a neat transfer of wealth from, incidentally, the less educated, presumably, the less affluent, to the more educated and therefore presumably the more affluent. A nice example of an uphill flow of tax money.
Okay. Are you getting this, everyone? Okay, because
It turns the world on its head, doesn't it?
we're going to have a quiz later. So.
You mean you're going to ask me? All right.
Now, next.
So pay attention.
Here's
folks.
one I know he wants to talk about this one. There is a religious partnership of faith. Now, this is an actual title.
Amen.
It seems that denominations,
People should be free to have whatever religion they wish.
Oh, yes.
Or none.
various denominations have gotten together in a religious partnership of faith, an alliance, and they are calling for gun control today in light of some of the things that have been happening recently.
Like in the high
Like in
school
Thomas Jefferson High School in Brooklyn and other things.
Yeah.
And they've been bringing up the fact that children get their hands on handguns and shoot other children.
Okay.
All the things that you might expect. What I want to hear you speak on this subject relative to our right to bear arms as laid down in the Constitution, and also, is it legitimate to say that we are paranoid, we are called sometimes paranoid by certain factions about having our weapons taken away from us?
Well, they're being taken away, so no, we're not paranoid. It's a very legitimate concern. If somebody is attempting to violate your constitutional rights to keep and bear arms, that's what it says. It means to own them without asking anybody's permission. It means to carry them about without asking anybody's permission. That's what the word bear means.
Okay, let me not get
Now,
you off the religious alliance, though.
I'm coming right back to it,
Okay.
because if somebody is taking those rights away, no, you're not paranoid to protect them. Absolutely not. It's very important. Now, you say this is a religious group. Well, I guess religious and anybody else, any other group, can freely speak and express their opinion, but I think folks should be aware that whatever guise they're going in, these people are attempting to deprive you and us of our constitutional rights. I therefore would have to support their right to say these repulsive things, but I would most vigorously disagree with them and hope that they do not get their way.
When Andre Marou spoke, and we had a clip here in a recent program, he talked about the middle ground of individual choice diminishing almost to nothing.
Yeah.
And that's where we stand today.
Yeah,
it's
right.
almost to nothing.
Right.
Because he said on the one hand, you've got that faction of government that mandates that we must do things, and those are the Democrats. And you've got that faction of government that restricts and regulates, and those are the Republicans.
Right. Yeah,
now, in this instance, religious leaders seem to be promoting the Republican point of view. Now, we've spoken about that before.
There are some Republicans.
Are they the ones who moralize more? And is that why the religious leaders gravitate toward that political party, and vice versa?
I don't know. I can't fathom that one, because after all, there are several thousand religions in America.
Why? But you've said yourself, right on this program, you've said, if you're a good Christian, for example, how could you possibly vote for evil? And both parties are doing evil constantly every day.
You know, every single thing they do is financed by stolen money, and this seems to be to disqualify them immediately from receiving the vote of any person who would believe, for example, in the Ten Commandments, which includes the phrase, "Thou shalt not steal," right?
Correct.
I don't know how any Judeo-Christian person in that tradition of religions can, in good conscience, vote for a Republican or a Democrat, because that's all they do. They steal money and then spend it on their favorite voters.
Why do you suppose the people with Judeo-Christian values have not discovered the libertarians? Is it simply a matter of educating people? I'm sure that there are scholars among them and they know of this philosophy.
Some have, of course, but I don't know, maybe it's our fault in not getting the word out effectively enough, but we're here, folks. If anybody's listening, read the commandment, "Thou shalt not steal." Do you believe that? Then it's time you stop voting for Republicans.
But of course, total individual freedom, and that goes part and parcel with the libertarian philosophy, total individual freedom, and that includes the use of anything you choose to put into your body and various other things that religious leaders would frown upon to a great degree. Maybe this is what stifles them, or what keeps them from
Very important distinction. You see, there are two different questions here with regard to what you're talking about, drug taking. One is, should you be at liberty to do it with your own body if you so choose? Answer, most certainly yes, it's your body. And second, do we or do the church leaders advise it as a good and worthwhile and desirable thing to do? And the answer to that is, it's up to them. They can give their opinion as they see fit on that, so long as they don't attempt to get their opinion written into law. That's the big thing, because then they would be using force and starting to take control over you and me and all of us.
And once again, they just become another lobby group.
They just become another lobby group. They're as bad as any
asking government to put the government gun, metaphorically, to the head of the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we don't have too much time. There's so many things we would like to go into, but here's one that I have to get to. Okay, this is because of my love of economics. It seems that major brokerage houses, with the power to advertise on national media, broadcast media especially. I can't name them. I don't think the public access TV channels would like it if I named them. But what they're always putting up front in commercials, which they're bombarding the public, and I listen to this every day, I spend a lot of time listening to radio especially, is they're saying, you can offset the tax bite by investing in government vehicles, government investment vehicles. In other words, they're telling you guys to give your hard-earned dollars to government officials, with the promise that those government officials will return the highest annual yield if you'll give $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 blocks of your hard-earned dollars, right, over to them.
I know the ones you mean.
Now, where is the interest for this coming from if they're saying that the actual yield is 11-point-something% and can, in fact, to a great degree, offset the high taxes that we all pay?
Your question being?
My question being, shouldn't we be telling the people, don't you dare invest your money in this vehicle, even if you slap your hand, even though you're so tempted to go after that actual 11-point-something yield?
Once again, freedom, unfortunately, allows villains like that to make money out of this making such advertisements.
But what's behind it?
They can speak it. Now, I'm very glad you raised this. I didn't know you were going to. I'm very glad you raised this. Consider the transaction here. If you manage to save up, despite the government's attempts to prevent you, if you manage to save up $1,000 and you want to invest it, you're looking at munis. Consider this. The very transaction itself of lending money to a government body is a fraudulent transaction. The bargain on their side is that they will, number one, pay you a certain interest rate, and number two, eventually, sometime in the future, pay you back. It can do neither of those two things without first stealing it from taxpayers. If this kind of contract were drawn between us two and it was ever challenged, the courts would throw it out just like that. It would be a completely void contract because I would be contracting with you to commit a crime. That's what you're doing when you buy a government bond.
We're running out of time.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
Now, Pete, there is one other highly topical question that our viewers may want us to answer before we go. With soaring healthcare costs all over the papers, should government involvement in healthcare increase, or should everyone pay their own way? We, of course, favor the latter. And I'd like to show what was said last week to the same question by Nancy Lord, who is running this November as a Libertarian for Vice President.
Socialized medicine won't work. It's not working in Canada. It's not working in Europe. They're rationing care. There's several month waits for simple procedures. It is going to cost us more in taxes than our premiums do today, and you won't even be able to pick your doctor. And this works in a like liberal, kind of personal freedoms, normal type crowd. The government will have our health records on file. I mean, I can't believe these liberals, these women who want to maintain their rights to choose, want this. They would know our habits, our lifestyles. What are they going to do if you're not watching your cholesterol appropriately? Are they going to demand that you bring in a letter from your health club? And God forbid you use a drug or smoke cigarettes. To me, I find this the most frightening prospect. I'm more afraid of this than losing Roe, because I tell you, we could lose Roe and we would still wind up, most of the states are going to have legal abortion. But this, we'd all be stuck with it, and we will never get rid of it. What we can do is get rid of the socialized medicine we have. Get rid of the mandates on employers that force them to provide extensive policies, many of the benefits in which are things we don't need. It is very difficult to get any health insurance in most states that does not cover drug treatment. Even if you're a Mormon who's never smoked, never drinks coffee, never would take a drug, it must cover psychiatry, though I'm sure there's many people in this room who could be clinically depressed, nearly suicidal, and would never go to a shrink. I know because I'm one of them.
I also noticed this delicious comment. If you want a healthcare system with the compassion of the IRS, the efficiency of their postal service, and the fiscal responsibility of the Pentagon, then you should support a national healthcare system.
And I want you folks to tune in next week, same time, same station, when once again we'll give you a different, refreshing choice. It's called the Freedom Alternative, and we're going to have a very special guest next week.
Dan
so
Plawecki,
join us.
He's going to join us and talk about the social security system. If you think you've got a pension coming at the end of your working life, he'll show you differently. Tune in. Good night.
Take care.